I feel like what is so good is that I have Pastor Shay. You know, that constant interaction just puts you so much more at ease than standing in front. And
we both get to use our gifting. Amazing grace. And Jesus, I sing for all that you have done for me. What is grace? God's unmerited favor. Good morning. I'm Pastor Sherry Colby, the senior pastor of Victory Worship Center and your host of Amazing Grace. Joining me this morning, as always, is Bev Duke, our amazing, stunning Bible teacher. You are a stunning Bible teacher. Not just in...
Stunning?
Yes, I was thinking
about
words.
Okay, no pressure at all.
I was thinking about words to describe you. I always say you're an incredible Bible teacher because it really is your gifting. But stunning, you know, I think you're stunning when you... Physically, I think you're stunning. I'm not okay. I'm not hitting on you or anything, okay? But you are a stunning Bible teacher.
Thank you.
When I think of how that word just puts it all together to me.
I'm going to have to be stunning today, Pastor.
So you're going to be beyond stunning.
The pressure's on.
The pressure's on.
This morning, we're excited. We have our very first male special guest.
Yay.
And it's Pastor Kraig Busman. He's an amazing man of God.
He is.
So I just want to kind of open up like we always do. So the last few weeks, we've been talking about how hot it is. We had a little bit of a break, you know, because we've had rain. It's pouring here in South Florida. But did anybody get their electric bill?
Mine comes like automatically, so I feel, but yes, I haven't got it this month, but it's all.
Oh, just wait, honey, until you see how much it cost. Oh, and I was talking to Pastor Chris. His jumped dramatically, and I know you would have no clue, right?
I am so blessed to have a wife that takes all that bad news away from me.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we're good for, right?
No, well, Pastor Kraig, you know, he hands his check over to his wife.
Yeah, that's what
they should
I don't even have to do that anymore. With direct deposit,
see there?
it just...
So he has no pressure.
I get my lunch money and I'm good.
You know what? There's a lot of pressure when you're the one that pays the bills, though. There's pressure in that. You're the one that knows, you know, is there enough money that's going to cover this and cover that? Then you can nitpick, shut the lights off. Do you ever get so mad at your parents because they would say, were you born in a barn, or shut the light off, and now you become your parents?
You know what I did was I put automatic lights through all of my in my kids' bathrooms and in their bedrooms. So now what it does, they'll get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and it's like, bing! So they hate me for that. They like it. But the lights turn off afterwards. I got tired of saying, shut the light off.
Oh, that's a good thought.
They're just like little timers. And but when I go into the bathroom, like in their bathroom, it's blinding.
Okay, so what about the new news about the kids going back to school? Now, this morning, I was up since 3. They said August 31st might be the time that the public schools go. I mean, you have a young child going back to school, and you have a daughter who's a teacher, so I guess she's kind of in that same wondering what's going on and how it's going to affect her. I don't know. I don't know how parents are doing this online stuff.
What do you think, Pastor Kraig? What's Megan's thoughts?
Listen, school is school, and I'm sure the kids are pretty excited about having an extended vacation.
Yes.
But that means that they're just going to bunch their education up a little bit. It's going to be jam-packed. And with this pandemic, we're all experiencing things we've never experienced before, and it kind of makes things interesting, at least.
Yeah, exciting.
Nonetheless. I wouldn't want to have to wait and wait and wait and wait, but, you know, they got out early. You know, they're going to go back late.
I don't have a kid in school. I think you know, if you have a child that's challenged in any way, oh my gosh, I would have flashbacks of what my life would have been. So we'll just move on from there. Okay, so Pastor Kraig, we know that you're a manager. Besides being the associate pastor here at Victory
I
Worship.
sound like you said sociopath.
Oh, sociopath? No, he's the associate pastor here at Victory Worship Center, and I'll tell you a little more about that. But he also, I don't know how you put in the hours you do between a part-time job and a full-time job, but you've been at Publix for how many years?
39 years.
39 years. Now you've never experienced this COVID thing and work.
It's been an experience. It puts a lot of pressure on. People aren't going out to eat as much as they used to, and they're buying a lot more groceries. And so that's good for my industry, but it's hard on the back sometimes, you know.
Okay, but how do people treat you during? Is it different? Are people strange during this time at the grocery store?
Yeah, when the pandemic first started, it was a lot of fear, and people were rushing in to get what they could and get out.
Toilet paper.
Now it's a social event at the grocery store because they can't go anywhere else really.
Right.
So they spend more time, but it makes it hard, and you know, everybody's trying to social distance. Everybody's trying to maintain their space, and it's an adventure in the grocery store.
Is it hard to wear that mask all day? You're cutting
I'm
fruit.
used to it now.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You know what I can't stand about the grocery store right now? I don't know. I guess all grocery stores are this way. I don't like those arrows. So you know what I do sometimes?
I never follow them, and until I'm halfway there and I see everybody come, and I'm like, yeah.
See, you don't follow the rules.
I don't live. I live in my own world. Everybody tells me.
You know
that.
what though? Have you ever? You know what I do sometimes?
I don't mean to not follow the rules. It's just
Sometimes
naturally
I
happens.
back up.
I've done that too.
I back up because I just need one thing and it's right there in the front. So if I back up,
That's so funny.
and
I've done
then I forget things because I'm like, I'm not going down that aisle. All right, so enough about Publix, but I love Publix. You know,
I do too.
I do too. My son works there, so.
Oh, your son just got a job.
Yes, he did.
That's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pastor Kraig. Pastor, you were born here in Florida, right?
Absolutely.
What
Fort Lauderdale,
So he's down there, and your parents are still there?
in Boca.
In Boca. All right, and then you married our secretary, who is I love dearly with all my heart. And
So do I.
And
how
it's her
many years have you
birthday.
been married to Fawn?
Fawn and I have been married, it'll be 32 years this year.
Oh,
Wow.
In November.
Congratulations.
32, wow. I still beat you. I'm going to be 46 in November. But anyway, so you've been married 32, you said?
I thought you only were 46.
I am. Thank you, Bev.
In victory years, yes.
All right,
that's
how did you,
we kinda-
I think of the story of how you met her. Just real quick, where did you meet Fawn?
Well, Fawn and I met at the South Florida Fair.
Oh, how romantic.
I was the man-eating chicken. Oh, no. I brought my youth group up from Boca Raton, and Victory Baptist Church was at the fair. We were sharing Christ at the fair, and Fawn and I were working in the same booth.
Was it love at first sight?
It was for me. It took me about 3 years to convince Fawn that I was Mr. Right. You know, I was Mr. I don't know for quite a long time, but yeah, we finally put it together. And
She's so amazing. I don't know what I'd do without her. I
She's
vent to
terrific.
her. She has to go through so much with me. So it's crazy. And you have one incredible daughter. I mean, I remember how the Lord told us that Fawn was going to have a child, and Megan is just the best. And she leads worship today here at Victory. And Pastor Kraig and I have been ministering together for 31 years.
that's pretty amazing.
That's
You know,
loyalty.
people are always shocked because a lot of churches only keep their staff so many years, but Pastor Kraig and I have been together 31 years. Pastor Chris and I have been together 25 years. So once you're here at Victory, you can't leave forever. But
It's like the Hotel California.
See, yeah.
Get
Right.
comfortable on that stool.
And so I think that probably the last 31 years working with me have been the best years of your life.
You know, for you, absolutely.
For me, very good.
Absolutely.
I tell you, he's been a youth pastor that's when he started out. He graduated last year. We'll talk about that. But you were a youth pastor for how many years?
35 years, the youth
So
pastor.
you started at what age?
11. In victory years. No, I started when I was 18.
See, I really wanted that known because so many times people think they have to be older if God calls them. But 18, and you've been an amazing youth pastor. I have to say, you've changed my boys' lives. They adore you. They're men today, and they still relate to you. But I think one of the funniest things that we talked about is my granddaughter just turned 12, and at 12 you go into the youth group, right? And she found out that Pastor Kraig was retiring from the youth and becoming the men's pastor. And, she was devastated. All my life I've been waiting for him. So
she's a drama queen too.
Well, not as bad as her grandmother. But yes, she's having a really hard time. She wants him in that room. I think the first time there's a security thing, and she kept hearing about him all her life. And so she just was so excited. Right? So now she wants to stay in the children's department. But we'll see what happens.
Paige and I have always had good conversation, even when she was little. And we've always had some intense conversations. So we'll maintain that. I'll make sure that we connect on a regular basis. She's amazing.
So now he's doing our men's group last year, and Fawn does our women's group. But since we went into COVID, he does the men's group on Facebook. How is that?
On Facebook Rooms on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. If you want to join us, send me a friend request on Facebook, and I'll make sure you get an invite to the room for men only. And we meet for about 45 minutes, just have a nice short little topic, and then we spend some time sometimes praying for each other, but it's a great time to spend together, men in a group. And you can do it from your living room, or a lot of the guys now go hide in their bedrooms, close the doors so nobody's around. It's a good time.
Pastor Kraig, did men, they're just like short and sweet. They get in and get out, right? You know, they don't want to, women want to linger for hours in our studies.
Well, you find personalities. Some people want to spend more time than others, and that's okay. And everybody's different. We have people that connect, you know, even after we finish meeting on Wednesday nights. We have some guys that'll stick around and chat. When I leave the room, doesn't close the room, people want to hang around, they can do that.
Good.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's good.
Well, I know we have to get into our Bible study. I just want to say the things that I admire about you, Pastor Kraig, and why I wanted you to be on the show with us.
This should be a short list. Let me write this down.
No, I'm going to tell you the things about you that I truly admire is you're very loyal, and I know I can depend on you. You've been a great person that you don't always have to be in the front. You're such a back supporter in everything. Though if I need you to preach, you preach. You're great in front, but you're also great in the back. And you don't have to be promoted all the time. And so I really admire that. You've been a great friend through the years. You're very hardworking, and that's so evident. You have such an understanding. You have a way of just really understanding where youth are at and where people are at. So you're able to just tap into their feelings, and I think it's an amazing quality about you.
I appreciate that.
You're extremely dependable, and I've watched you walk the walk all these 31 years.
True.
I met you through the ministry, and I always remember I was around a copy machine, and we just lost our youth pastor at my last church, and I went to Pastor Ron, and I said, let's give this young man a chance. And who would ever know that day around that copy machine would be 31 years later.
We have a friendship for a lifetime.
Forever and ever. Amen. It's forever, okay? All right, now my stunning Bible teacher here at Amazing Grace. Some weeks we'll have a topic. We realize some weeks we might have a testimony, but most of the time, well, we shouldn't say most, okay, but today, Bev is, again, the stunning Bible teacher. So let's get right into, tell us where we can find this story in the Bible. Okay. It's all yours, Bev.
Okay, so I want to say something about Pastor Kraig, though, because I want to do a shout out to him. And that what I love about him is that he's a teacher. So when you give a message, you're always teaching. I love that style. I mean, I love preaching, and
Oh, wait a minute. Are you trying to say that?
No, no. But I lean toward, like, I perk up and, like, listen because that is something that, did I touch one? You know how I'm always hitting.
Oh, yeah, we can.
Anyway, so when you, and it's so tender often. Real and tender, and so it always really touches me. So I really love your style of preaching, and I can appreciate it. And as I tell a little bit this morning, please, like, help me tell this story if you would. Okay, so I gotta put my glasses on so you definitely can tell my age. I can't see anything without them. So we've been listening and discussing some interesting Bible stories. Last week it was the true love story between
2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, 2 weeks ago, between Ruth and Boaz. And then the week before that, it was kind of a tragedy between the two Tamars. And this week, no less, it's a great narrative. This one has drama and suspense. And I've been called a drama queen as well. So I love this story, but God is the true drama king. So I figure he can write one better than anyone. But I love what the ESV Study Bible says about this, and I couldn't have said it better for myself. So I really want to read what they said about this story. It says, it has virtually all the ingredients that people through the ages have loved most in a story. It has a beautiful, courageous heroine, a romantic love thread, a dire threat to the good characters. It has a thoroughly evil villain.
Yeah.
It has suspense and dramatic irony, evocative descriptions of exotic places.
Evocative.
Yes.
Evocative.
Of exotic places in Persia. Sudden reversal of action, poetic justice, and of course, a happy ending. So are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay, well, alas. It's 10 chapters, so I cannot tell this story fully. Even if I were to paraphrase the whole thing, we'd be here all morning. But I decided, I promised like maybe we'll do a teaching on this later and we'll develop some more teachings. But God had given me a topic to build upon. And last night, I'm still at 12:30 trying to build on that topic. And I was like, Lord, I had all 2 weeks to write this message. What is happening? And then for some reason, I just said, I'm going to turn on Pastor Kraig's message again because I had trouble hearing it on Sunday. And I turned it on at 12:30 last night. And it just spoke to me so much. And so I finished it within 45 minutes. So that is what we're going to piggyback on your message. And so let's do that. So let's go to where we end. So this story is really a story about divine providence moving these people in demotion and promotion. So that's what I really saw in the message. So if you look at chapter 1, we have the story of a king throwing a big party, and just real quick, that he calls in front of all of these people, wants to have his wife, the queen, Vashti, brought in all her glory with her royal crown. And there's questions about how she's brought in. Is she fully clothed or not? But she refuses. And so she's demoted instantly. She's cast out. Read the story because it's so good.
Yeah.
But then chapter 2, he's a little sad. The king is sad about what happened, and he's starting to think about it, maybe reconsider what's happened here. And then the guys come up, all his wise men come up with a different story, and we're going to pick a new queen. And he's calling all the young virgins in, and that's where Hadassah comes into the story, and her name is changed to Esther.
So you're out of the book of Esther at this
I am
point.
out of the
Thank
book
you.
of Esther, which sandwiched in between Nehemiah and Job. Job? Okay, yes. And she's brought in, and then she's picked out of all the lovely virgins, she's chosen. So she's promoted. So she's got the thumbs up. Then in the very next chapter, this guy comes on the scene. In the previous chapter talks about all these wise men that are it names them all. So they're all his wise men and they're all his council. But all of a sudden, this guy named Haman comes on the scene in chapter 3, and somehow he's in the second command. So we don't know who this guy is, but we find out that he is an Agagite. Is it Agagite? He's from the line of King Agag, from way back between Saul and King Agag, when King Saul didn't kill King Agag, and then Samuel, out of obedience to God, the prophecy, and Samuel had to go in and kill him, but there was descendants somehow because of what was left. And so he is from there, and he calls him the enemy of the Jew. So somehow he's promoted. So in chapter 3, Haman's really promoted. And he comes up with this terrible plan to kill off the Jews. And it's very evil.
And why did he want to kill the Jews?
Why did he want to kill the Jews? Well, I believe there was a mastermind planned from Satan to kill off their line.
see, when I got to that point, I'm thinking it was his pride because Mordecai wouldn't bow down.
Well, yes, of course. Of course it was his pride, but you know, behind every prideful person, there's an evil plan behind that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think the seed was there from the very
long
beginning.
before, because he was called the enemy of the Jews, so it was already, that's why some people have questions about how this story ends, and it sounds so sad that everybody, you know, the way it ends, but this was an enemy of God's people. Okay? So, so he's promoted. Then all of a sudden in chapter 4, we see a dilemma for Esther. So she has a great decision to make because Mordecai, her cousin, so a little bit of backstory is that this young girl named Hadassah, this young virgin who was brought into the king's concubines, what happened for her was that she had lost her mother and father, and she was an orphan who was raised by her cousin. And he also is a scribe for the king. So she hides her identity while she's chosen to be queen and she's promoted. She hides that identity, and this evil plot comes to kill the Jews, but no one knows that she or Mordecai are Jews until Mordecai tells Haman that he is a Jew. So that is, do you have anything to add to that, Pastor Ben?
No, I think God set this thing up from the very beginning so that it would be successful in the end. So keep going with your story. It's a great story.
So, so she's in this dilemma because Mordecai comes to her and he's saying, you have to do something. You're the queen. And she's like, well, who am I? The king hasn't even called for me for 30 days. What am I going to do? And she's nervous, but she submits to Mordecai. And he says to her, you know, who knows that, you know, you haven't come to the kingdom for such a time as this. So she says, okay, I'm gonna do this. And she's in that, will she or will she not? The suspense is drawing, and she does. Okay. She does. So she goes to the king, and she comes to him, and he hands the golden scepter, and she says, he's like, what do you want, Queen Esther? And she doesn't tell the story yet. So now more suspense and tension is building in this story. You really have to read this story too to get the full account of it, but I'm just giving the brief. So what she does is she calls this mystery dinner, this mystery banquet. And so I think that King Xerxes is very intrigued. He's like, yes, I'm going to go to this. And she invites Haman, which just gives him a little bit more pride because he's the only one invited, right?
And he goes back and brags about that,
and he
too.
brags
He
about
brags
it.
about
Yes, he does. And so she calls this mystery banquet, and the tension, it's a nail biter, you know, what's going to happen? But she does it. And so they're at this this story, and at this point in the story, and she's in chapter 3, they're at the banquet, and they're waiting for her to tell the reason why she wanted to have a meeting with the king, but she doesn't. She builds the tension even more, and she's promoted in the midst of this. Somehow King Xerxes likes this tension. He likes this little intrigue, and he says, Esther, my queen, you can have half my kingdom. Again, promotion, more. And she says, well, if it pleases you, king, will you come to my house tomorrow night for another banquet? And Haman is invited too. So he's super excited. He goes home and brags about it to his wife. But you know what he says? If it wasn't for that Mordecai who won't bow down to me. He reminds me of King Ahab.
We're going to talk about him next week.
Yes, if it wasn't for him. So he goes home and his wife says, well, we'll build a gallows. And so all that evil demise is planning for Mordecai. But in chapter 6 is my favorite personal chapter, because this is the irony, or the reversal right here is Mordecai is promoted because all of a sudden, in the back chapter, and I think it's chapter 2, Esther unfolds a plot to kill the king that she overhears. And she tells the king that Mordecai told her, but he forgets about it. And so what happens is the king can't sleep one night, another divine push. Although God is never mentioned in this story, we see him pushing the whole time.
He's directing it
he's directing the director of the story. So the king can't sleep. He just can't get a good night's sleep. And then he says, we never did anything for that Mordecai. So he calls in Haman, because Haman just happened to be walking in the halls. He goes, Haman, what should we do for the man who pleases the king? And of course, Haman thinks it's about him. So he says, well, certainly he's thinking it's me. So he comes up. He should wear the king's royal robe. He should ride on the king's horse, and someone should shout, I forget what it was. What did he yell? Like, this is the man, the king.
Taking him through town and let the whole city see him.
The king says, great idea. Now do that for Mordecai. And Haman is just
imagine?
Humbled, and he's just like, he just can't get a break. He is devising all, and it made me think of what you said, when we do wicked, the world goes against us.
Absolutely.
And it made me think of that in this part of the story, because he was so devising evil, but the world, which ultimately was God, was working against him. And so instead, Haman's demoted, and Mordecai is promoted. Yeah. So next chapter, and that is chapter 7, really becomes the next banquet. And the next banquet is, the king is done with the suspense. He goes, tell me what you want, up to half my kingdom. What's going on? And she tells a story. Someone is trying to kill off my people. He didn't even ask, who are people?
Right.
He didn't say, he goes, who did this? And she says, this evil Haman. And here he is right there. He's thinking he's promoted at this banquet. And instead, he is pointed the finger at. He is exposed. So this is definitely Haman's demise and Haman's demotion. So the king is like, we're done with you. And he has Haman taken out of the room with his face covered, and he leaves the presence, and that's the last we hear of Haman. The next chapter, which is chapter 8, is really just the last 3 chapters, 8, 9, and 10, is the unfolding of Purim and the festival, because what happened, this edict was already put in place, and so by the king, and to kill the Jews, demised by Haman. And so Queen Esther says, please reverse this. And he pretty much says, I can't reverse it because I've put the king's seal on it, but I'm going to give the Jews opportunity to fight the people that are trying to come against them. And so they do, and it says in chapter 8 that Queen Esther gets all of Haman's plunder, and Mordecai gets the signet ring. So 2 thumbs up of promotion for Esther and Mordecai. And then chapter 9, the Jews are promoted. It says the Jews gained mastery over those who hated them, and they rose in the kingdom. So Haman's further demoted by his line and heritage, which seems a little scary, but all 10 of his sons were hung on the gallows by Queen Esther's command. And that sounds kind of sad, but what happened was that he had an evil line, a thread, and that had to be wiped out, that God had commanded Saul to do in the past. And Esther carries it out. And that line is ended. And then chapter 10 is Mordecai's full account and high honor of Mordecai. And it says, this is Mordecai's full account of the high honor of Mordecai and the ultimate promotion. And this is where I would say that this is what God showed me, is this is an absolute impossible situation, state of affairs, affecting the whole ancient world at that time. And it was saved by 2 unlikely people that were family, and they were nobodies in the kingdom, but in God's kingdom, he saw them as queen and second in command. And they were up against great pomp, wealth, intrigue, evil, and yes, Mordecai's wisdom, was brought in, and Esther's obedience and submission, but what God really showed me, and what he originally has showed me, was that family matters. That just these 2 little people that we might think were nobodies, and what's going on right now with this pandemic, that we might think we're nobodies, or what can I do? And a lot of fear and intimidation are coming up against us right now, confusion, all those things that happened then. But what is happening is that God is calling small families, large families, imperfect families, perfect families, broken families, healed families, to such a time as this.
I would agree with a lot of that. And there's so many other things you can pull out of this story. Like you said,
yes.
somebody would have to really go back, read the book of Esther. But one thing I've always said to people in counseling sessions is when you're in a situation and you know that something untruthful is being told, you know, kind of like what Haman was doing, I always say, you do the right thing. At the end, the truth always comes out in the end if you handle your end right. So that's when God can step in and accomplish his will. But when we want to take it into our own hands, where she was very wise and used the wisdom, and so the truth came out in such a perfect way that she didn't have to start pointing a finger at him. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to do, right? We always want to point a finger. So that's one of the things that I saw. I had a few things jump out from this. What was something that might have jumped out in the story to you?
Well, you know, I'm a huge Disney fan, and so when I read this story again, I read it and it just sounded like a Disney story to me. It sounded, it had all
How many
the
times
elements.
have you been to Disney?
Oh, millions of times, and I just felt like the good was going to win. You just knew what how it was going to end. You just knew it from the very beginning. But what some of the things that caught my attention was how easily the king gave up his rights. How easily the king gave up his signet ring. He gave it away twice.
Yes.
And he gave it away to people who made really world life-changing decisions for thousands of people. He gave that authority away. And
great insight.
And one thing that I learned from this story was that once the king said this had to be done, he couldn't change it.
That's right.
Right.
You know,
you had
to be really careful what you said back then.
And once his signature was on it, it was going to be done. And he was willing for it to be changed, but he couldn't go back and take his words back.
Yep.
It was a representation of who he was. And I think one thing that the king needed to learn was, hey, listen, I need to be extremely careful who I let speak for me and what information gets out there just because I like somebody. You know, we have a lot of friends. We trust some few, you know, a few people. And
yes,
sometimes
so
we give those people a lot of leeway to do some things and make decisions in our lives that we end up paying for. And the king really ended up paying for that, for the decisions. The man liked his wine and he liked a good party.
Yeah, it was the wine that got him in a lot of trouble. It was always after a big party, right? He would
now,
say
I'm
things.
thinking there's people taking notes. Hey, listen, if you want to get on the king's good side, throw him a good party. Yeah. And make sure there's plenty of wine.
Right.
And he was giving the best wine to all his guests, too.
And then ask for stuff from him.
Yes, right?
So
because that's how the story unfolds.
Absolutely. But you know what? God was able to use the king's weakness for his benefit as well at the end. And we saw two families in this situation. We saw Haman's family.
Yes,
we saw his
wicked
complete family get destroyed.
Right.
And it was because that they had in their own mind to do what they wanted to do.
And they themselves were trying to promote themselves.
Right, that was what I was thinking.
They were trying to promote themselves, whereas they were trying, it says in the very end, the last chapter, well, I was going to read that, but it says that for Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to the king, and he was great among the Jews and popular with the multitude of his brothers. Why? Because he sought the welfare of his countrymen and spoke peace to all his people. That's the quote. So he was concerned for others, not himself.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's when God promotes.
Yes.
He always knows the motive of your heart. We talk about that all the time. So he knows the motive of why we do what we do. Every decision we make are we being nice to somebody for our own self-promotion?
Yes.
You know, it's always that evaluating. That's what I love about the Bible. You can go back, and if you put yourself in their shoes, you probably know that you've done some of these things. Now, one thing I loved is we've been talking about strong women in the last couple weeks. And Esther, wow, that showed a lot of courage. Yeah. And I loved how she respected, for some reason I was thinking it was her uncle, but you said cousin, but you know, she respected him. He raised her, and maybe, you know, I would be a little hesitant. You weren't allowed to just go before a king. So the courage it took for her to respect her cousin who raised her and to still follow under his honoring him.
Well, you know, what it says here is that we have to remember, like if we knew the backstory, is that Mordecai is from this dispersion of the Jews. So he came
he
from
didn't come back,
Babylon.
right.
So he actually went through all of that. Most likely he experienced.
He didn't go back when he could have.
And he didn't go back when he could have. So he was ingrained in there. And then, so Hadassah, or Esther, who's our star, she didn't. So she looked to him. And I really think I relate to her a little bit differently, because I can be somebody who's a little fearful. And I feel like I've come a long way in that area, but it was listening to good advice and wisdom of people who've been there, done that, and been through great loss, and listening to how they got out of that situation. And I feel like Mordecai had such great wisdom, and she respected him and listened to him. And also because she said, well, I haven't seen the king, but you know, she had her little tilted crown. Like, she was the queen. So if anybody had an ear, it was her. And she said, okay. She did the SWAT that we talked about the first time. She sought the Lord. She called for a fast.
Yes.
And that's the only allusion to the Lord that we can possibly see.
That they carried on their belief system.
Yep, that they called a fast. Then she waited for the right timing, and then she acted. And she went for it, and then she trusted in what was going to happen. And I feel like that's what she did.
Timing is everything in decisions that we make. You know, even to talk to somebody, right?
And Esther worked great under pressure. She knew that when Haman got that signet ring and said, listen, we're going to get rid of all the Jews, she knew at that point her life was over. She knew that her death was imminent. So under pressure, under the saying, you know what, this is it, she was able to say, hey, listen, I know that my God has a plan that can be greater than this. Yes. And so let's follow every precept that God has intended for us. Let's follow that until the end, because I know God can change the situation. And God did. And for her to do that under the pressure of, hey, listen, I'm going to die, to make those great decisions under pressure, man, she deserves an amazing amount of credit for doing that.
I agree with that. Another thing, when you realize that, you know, they say that Mordecai didn't go back. You know, after they were captured, they had been in there. He didn't go back. And, you know, some people say, well, you know, there isn't a lot about God in this story. But just knowing that he wouldn't bow down to Haman. And that's what irritated Haman. You know, his pride was, I'm a somebody, and you need to honor that I'm in a position higher than you. But he had a religious conviction still in his people. And we see that in other stories in the Old Testament. But he wouldn't bow down. And so it shows that there is some kind of, he was carrying on his belief system in that way.
He was. And I think perfect timing. Well, also, I wanted to say what you said, something about the king talking too much. Esther didn't talk. She held back. Exactly. She did not tell anything. She built up great suspense where that king wanted to please her, and her timing was so perfect. But what we see right now going on in this world is that we have a perfect timing right now to straighten our crowns.
Amen.
And get out there and make a difference, to be who we've called. We're called kings and priests, to actually make a difference in this world. What's going on right now? There's a lot going on, and instead of shrinking back in fear,
and not bow down to the system.
That's right. Instead of shrinking in fear, and we have people out there. There's much bigger things depending on us. Our country is in dire straits right now. The world is. It's very important for believers to stand up, because this is something that I thought too with her. Mordecai says to her, you know what, if you don't do this, he says, the Jews are going to be saved, he said, because God will say, they'll be saved some other way. He knew that line was going to be saved. But he says, but you'll perish. So what he was saying was, at this time, they're going to die, but there is a lineage that will go through. Because I think he knew who Haman was. His lineage went through, and he was going to stamp out that, because that's what God's plan's going to come through. It didn't come through back with Saul, but it came through here. God's plan's going to go through. He
always accomplishes his purpose.
So be a part of it. We can be a part of it, or we can perish.
Absolutely.
And either we can do it in the first round in God's timing, or it can be the
Yes.
second round in God's
Yes.
timing, right?
Yes.
Sometimes if we would just get it the first time and be obedient the first time, it would just help eliminate so much stress in our lives, in our country, and you know,
Of course.
we get it. We get it.
Of course.
So you have any last minute things you'd like to share about what your insight to this?
No, that's a great story. It's a great sense of encouragement for us to press on through, even through these tough times.
Yeah.
And if we do things God's way,
That's right.
if we're part of God's family, and part of His, chosen children to move forward, then things are going to fall in line for us. And so we just have to believe that time is coming. Things may look bleak, things may look tough, but you know what? God's going to accomplish His plan and His desire. We just need to be diligent. One thing that kind of caught me is that Esther was kind of in training to be queen for a year
Yes.
before she was chosen. And I'm thinking a year, although years go by fast and faster, and it seems for me the years are going by fast, a year is a long time to process information and a long time to get ready. And she had to maintain her and increase her development in her spiritual walk during that time, as well as the things that she was being asked to do. And so her character just grew in that year that she had to prepare.
Yeah,
she
but
was
to
being
have a whole
promoted.
year to do beauty treatments?
Oh yeah. Listen, from someone
That would
who
be
knows-
great.
But you know what? One thing about her is that she was gaining in favor. That whole promotion, the whole time she was in that training with Haggai and all the different men and the eunuchs that were guarding over them, she was gaining promotion and setting an elevation. And I just want to say this at the end of the story is that, for me, I have to remind myself sometimes who I am. I'm the queen, like I'm the princess of
No,
God.
I'm the queen.
Oh, well, I'm
Okay.
the
No,
second
okay.
queen.
I'm
the
not the
princess.
queen.
You're the
But
king.
I have a Bitmoji, and I put a little crown on her to remind me. So whenever my Bitmojis go out to my people in text messages, I have a crown on. But it says this, that this promotion and this elevation that was going on, that God is still doing it today, and it all started with two unlikely people. So what can we do to promote peace like Mordecai? Because that's what your message said. In the end, it was promoting peace. And what can we do to be brave like Esther?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to leave you with that thought as we were coming to a close. And again, Pastor Kraig, I love you so much, and we
been
really
great to be here.
appreciate you
It's
being
fun.
our special guest. We encourage you, if you will, to subscribe. We praise God now. We have our own channel. If you go to victoryworship.com now / Amazing Grace. You can see some of the back. If you missed any of the episodes of Amazing Grace, you'll want to catch up. We've had some great guests, and we're excited that we have our own page now. We would ask you that you would share this, and you would share even Sunday mornings. We have our service, we go live at 10 a.m. You can come live on Sunday mornings, or you can watch us on live stream. So we would really encourage you to do so. Now, next week, I'm excited. I'm always saying that word, right? I'm excited about our guest. His name is Damian Simmons. He has been my pharmacist for the last few years. He owns Atlantis Pharmacy, and an incredible man. I can't wait to tell you a little bit about this man, and everyone that ever meets him comes back to me and says, thank you. I always get a thank you for introducing me to Damian. So I know you'll enjoy him, and I can't wait, Bev, for you to be able to meet him also.
Should I be stunning next week?
You're always stunning. Your teachings are stunning. I've given him the story of what we're going to be teaching, or you're going to be teaching. So it's going to be a great Bible study next week, because we're going to be talking about Jezebel, Ahab, and Elijah. Now, those are 3 strong characters, so you don't want to miss it. Again, remember, this is Amazing Grace, and God loves us so much, and nothing can separate us from the love of God. Tell somebody about Jesus, share this, and we'll see you next week on Amazing Grace.